What's the worst smell that you've ever experienced? My mom had bought farm fresh eggs one week. I remember grabbing one to fry and make an egg sandwich. I heated up the pan and cracked the egg in there. What came out of the egg was a black rotten mess that smelled of pure evil. I threw up like a second after smelling the rotten egg and seeing the black mess writhe and heave in the pan. My puke went all over the frying pan and stove, creating a horrible fusion of fried rotten egg and sick. That was the worst smell I've ever smelled. I'm guessing you wouldn't like the Chinese delicacy 1000-year-old eggs, then. The burn unit of a hospital. Burnt flesh and disinfectant. Unforgettable. Yes, I was an intern and attended surgeries, where they amputated legs and welded the end of the arteries. The smell of burned human flesh is so disgusting. Tonsil stones. Dang, that crap's nasty. Those friggin' bile fossils are disgusting. My roommate once kept one in a tiny bottle and would waft it under sleeping people's noses. I feel sick just thinking about it. Opening of an exhumed coffin. 6 months. You can't describe it. Death and decay. It's a smell that lingers. It stays in your nose for hours. Also pretty bad. Butyric acid. Recreated that scene from Family Guy where everyone is puking in my kitchen with my husband, myself and my child after finding 4+ month-old rotten chicken in a Tupperware that had fallen down behind the drawer in my fridge. I don't know why I opened it. It was like opening a portal to stench shack. The smell was indescribable. It demanded you vomit. You had no choice. I puked so much I felt like my stomach had been turned inside out and scrubbed with steel wool. Okay, I'll bite. I've worked in a wide number of medical settings and smelled it all. Vomit, crap, raspy abscesses, gas-forming anaerobic bacteria. That one can knock you down. Dead bodies that have been baking for a while. And nothing compared to a Doberman Pinscher who swallowed an entire bedspread whole. I was working my way through college as a vet assistant at the time. I am not joking, exaggerating or making this up. I have no photos. This was long before cell phone cameras. This dog was really neurotic, and her parents were getting a divorce. Somehow, she had managed to work down an entire at least double-sized bedspread in one piece. We could not understand how she circumvented a gag reflex and didn't choke to death. Mom notices the dog isn't eating and is a bit bloated, so she brings her in. Her color sucks, and we're thinking stomach torsion, which is a very bad scene for dogs. We open her up and get nailed by the most god-awful smell we've ever encountered. Rotting, putrid, eye-burning, blow your hair back. Way worse than any crap I've ever smelled, or rotting body for that matter. The vet is an old farm boy. He laughed at us while he pulled this sucker out. One of techs ran out and puked in a sink. We also had a bottle of peppermint oil for the inside of your mask for such instances, and the sucker was empty. I nearly killed the tech who didn't replace it later. It was one of those old chenille bedspreads with those weird tufts all over it. I would not have believed it if I hadn't seen it for myself. I know you're going to tell me it isn't possible, but we saved the bedspread for the owners to see because they knew they wouldn't believe us either. The dog lived. What I thought was bizarre is that the owners are getting a divorce, so their dog eats their bedspread. Ha, great story. There was this Bernese mountain dog that lived down the street from me growing up who used to eat full bath towels, I believe on 2 occasions. Fried cat pee. Let me tell you a tale. When I first moved in with my we were also living with another couple who happened to be very good friends of ours. Now my had a cat, and I had a cat that I had yet to move to our new apartment because I needed to set aside an exorbitant amount of money for the pet fees. Before I could do that, the roommates bought a cat of their own. Now we would have 3 cats in a 2-bedroom apartment. 3 cats, 2 of which had never lived together and were male. This meant a knuckle fur apocalypse for 4 months when I introduced them. They hated each other. My cat took to using the restroom in strange places out of stress, and one day he decided to climb up onto the counter and pee on the toaster. Yes, he pee on the toaster. So one day one of us went to make a bagel and suddenly realized something was wrong. Were we being attacked by terrorists? This had to be mustard gas or some biological agent meant for mass murder. Try to imagine cat pee that has sat for at least several hours, and then think about reheating it to reactivate its pungent nature. Our house smelled like some kind of hateful acid gas for several days, and that was the worst smell I've ever encountered. I love this story for the mental imagery of a cat contently taking a pee on a toaster. Rotting potatoes. It's a disgusting cross between a skunk spray, a dead animal, and crap. It's a toss-up between rotting potatoes and sour chocolate milk for me, but the potatoes are pretty dang bad. Found one so rotten that it had turned into a black liquid. I have a strong stomach, but I could not clean that mess up. A 5+ year-old egg that was hidden for Easter that my friend found and threw on our basketball court. I threw up for an hour, not lying. Here's hoping that, afterward, you threw your friend on the basketball court. I was a plumber for 25 years. I have encountered numerous odoriferous offenders including dead bodies, rotting animals in sewers and attics, grease traps, sewer-filled basement rooms and more runoffs. The most memorable smell for pure unadulterated offense to my olfactory senses is the smell from inside a soda station drain system, inside any fast food restaurant you want. When I was an electrician, we had the massive Mickey Mouse looking rubber gloves. One time my co-worker found a dead bat and put it in my rubber glove. It was in my job box for the weekend and just turned to stew. Monday morning he pretended like he had an emergency and yelled, "Get your gear on now," so I ran over, ignored the smell, and forced my glove on, spraying dead bat juice all over my chest and face. Literally everyone threw up. An empty train car at rush hour. It smelled like a planet made of crap, powered by a sour milk sun, with an atmosphere full of pea clouds. I know that smell exactly. I love when conditions are just right in the summer to create that blue feta cheese smell. OMG. Several years ago now, during my plumbing apprenticeship schooling, our instructors took us on a tour of the wastewater treatment facility in our city. Suffice to say, it was the most disgusting smell I've ever experienced. I don't know how people work there. My clothes stunk when I got home from school. I actually ended up throwing out the sweater I had been wearing. Even after a wash, it still smelled like raw sewage. There's nothing quite like the poignant aroma of a city of 1.2 million people's sewage. I can only imagine what it must be like in some older cities of the world. Places with 10 or 20 or 30 million people. Disgusting. Good thing I'm not in the field any longer. Your good friend. When I was a teenager, I think about 14, maybe 15, my grandfather was supposed to come over for dinner, but he never showed up. My dad called him and he answered the phone, said he wasn't feeling well, and we said we'd just do it next weekend. Unfortunately, he died that night, and since he lived alone in a remote area, no one found out. The next weekend comes along, and he doesn't show up again, and again my dad calls, but no answer. Him not answering the phone was a common thing. We assumed he wasn't feeling well and let it be, but after he hadn't returned the message for a few more days, we went up to his house to check on the old man. Welp, we walked into the house, and there he was, in his chair, TV on, dead over a week, middle of summer, no windows open or air conditioning. I will never, ever forget that smell. It was kind of sickly sweet, but in a very wrong way. I don't know how to explain it, but frick me was it terrible. People soup. Usually when someone dies in the bathtub or shower at home, or any body of water, really, and decomposition takes its course, they're much quicker to ripen during the summer. Hawkeye just threw up in my mouth thinking of it. Sometimes I really don't like my job. You never forget the smell of a hoarder's house, especially one that has cats. The cats used the shower as their litter box. The house was infested with roaches. There was rotting food in the kitchen, and I was forced to spend a night. Visiting my grandma's farm as a child was awesome, and it made everyday normal games so much more fun there. One day, my sister and I were playing kitchen outside and I got a hold of what I thought was a fake egg. On accident, I dropped this egg and instead of it bouncing like plastic, it exploded and let this rancid mind-clouding awful smell onto the porch and into the rest of the house. Apparently the farm was home to wild ducks and this egg had been confiscated from its nest and somehow ended up on the porch. I have never wanted to not breath so much in my life. I don't drop eggs anymore. My dog once managed to get a jar of horseradish open. He ate the entire contents, describing the smell of his farts. Crap would never come close to the reality. Grease traps. I worked at a cafe that would hire people to clean the grease traps during the lunch rush. I sit next to this girl in 2 of my classes, and she always has deadly breath. What's worse is she never sleeps enough, so she is constantly tired and therefore yawns all the time. Every time I hear her yawn, all I can do is brace myself for the eye-watering pungent odor that's going to hit me in a few seconds. Not the worst smell, but perpetually terrible, and there's nothing I feel comfortable doing about it. And before you guys suggest offering gum, I've done that a few times and she never takes it. A bed sore roughly the size of a basketball, absolutely putrid. Close second is about 150 pounds of goat cheese that sat in a dumpster in 90-degree heat for a good week and a half. Surströmming or something like that, a Swedish specialty. It's fermented fish and it stinks like heck. Lived here over 5 years and have yet to smell it. It's the stuff of legends. 1,000 pounds of burning sugar at a molasses factory. Honestly, a stink bomb. Crap's freaking disgusting. After Hurricane Katrina, I went with a relief group to clear homes. This meant taking everything out, trashing it, and tearing the house down to the studs. We went in July the year after, and the house we had was owned by a former catering business owner. He had 3 industrial-sized freezers in the garage that had been flooded and baking for nearly a year. We couldn't get into the garage through the house and had to break down the garage door. The smell that came from that place was enough to make everyone in our group literally vomit. Grown men doubling over even before the door was down. The freezers had been full of beef and pork, then turned into a soup with flood waters, then boiled in 100+ degree temps for a year. 2/10 would not smell again. I got to know those smells well myself. Thanks for coming down, though. I used to work at an animal hospital. One early morning after taking my coat off, a coworker pulls me aside and says, "Hey, I need your help with something outside." Right away I knew it was bad. The only thing we keep outside are hoses, pooper scoopers and the freezer. The freezer is where we keep recently dead euthanized pets before they are taken by a pet cemetery service. They come every Tuesday to empty the freezer. It's Tuesday. Outside, the driver of the removal truck is smiling nervously in front of the padlocked freezer. Something reeks. It wasn't so bad. We pop it open and witness one of the few spectacles that I might never forget. The freezer light, which is designed to turn off when the door closes, has malfunctioned. It has remained lit for days, not only burning the plastic body bags containing the carcasses but also burning large amounts of fur and cooking some flesh. It was the most putrid and outright dizzyingly disgusting odor I've ever come across. The combination of burnt, rotting flesh, singed fur, and melted plastic created a potpourri of the most vile stenches known to man. My disgust is plastered on my face as I stare into the frozen stink tub. I look up at the truck driver and he grins, chuckling, "That'll wake you up in the morning." I got a valet with the worst BO of all time, attached to my clothes, infected my friend Elaine. Got my car detailed, didn't help. I had to sell my car, the beast. Nice try, Seinfeld. Maybe not the worst ever, but the most powerful was taking one step into the leather factory in Fez, Morocco. When he opens the door, the smell almost knocks you out and you wonder how are all those people actually working in there. I was repairing the phone lines in a leather factory. It's a smell that lingers for weeks. A dumpster filled with old deep fryer oil. The phlegm I was regularly coughing up when I had pneumonia. My girlfriend said I smelled like the crypt keeper. I went to recycle the aluminum cans from my grandfather's bar. The entire shed behind the bar was full. 50-60 garbage bags, full of cans. Must have been 5-6 months worth. It was the end of summer, so the bags had been there through the heat of summer. The smell of moldy beer, baking in the summer heat, with basically zero ventilation, was easily one of the foulest smells I've ever encountered. That was 10 years ago and I still remember how putrid the stench was. Anyone who owns a bar has probably dealt with this at some point. The worst part was probably dripping beer juice on my hands, arms. It took everything I had not to vomit continuously through the entirety of the day, but I know he appreciated it, so I suppose it was worth it. I cooked a big ass leg of beef for our 30th birthday. I was 45 kilograms of aged goodness that I spit roasted over a charcoal fire. The party was in the woods and once everyone had eaten their fill, we put the remaining half a leg into the back of my cousin's van to stop foxes getting at it. I was so hungover that I totally forgot about it until mid-afternoon the next day. It had been festering in there at a perfect 30-40°C all day and was turning green, very much like me when I opened the door. A large amount of rotten meat is quite hard to get rid of as it is classed as toxic waste, so I had to chop it up and bury it in various places. I hurled several times and ran a fairly good chance of getting arrested on suspicion of murder. Not sure if it was the worst smell or the worst state I have been in smelling something bad. The bottom, backside, underside, adjoining sewer drain of a dumpster at the fast food joint I used to work at. We had corporate coming in for an inspection and my boss thought of the most asinine places to clean up. Places they would never look or even think about. One of those places, underneath the dumpster. You know, just in case Bruce Banner was on the inspection team and decided to lift the dumpster for a quick peek. He assigned an assistant manager, myself, and 2 other guys to the task. We had to come in at 4:45 AM on Saturday, when the garbage company came by, to ask them to leave the dumpster out of the bay so we could pressure wash and scrub it clean. Shoulder seen the look on that guy's face. Something akin to, "Are you sure you want to do that, and you poor bastards?" They pulled out the dumpster and just, I can't describe. There was a drain underneath which helped, sort of. It was just years of caked up food and animal waste. Several dead rats and other animals, and some live ones which scurried off. We couldn't pressure wash it. We had to get shovels and just start picking up and dumping it, well, into the dumpster. Where else? After about an hour and a half of shoveling, raking, and scrubbing, it was clear enough of thick layers that pressure washing actually did something. Not even the longest or dirtiest day of my working life, but definitely the smelliest. Dead people in summer, 96 hours decomposing. Dead people in summer. This sounds like a great song. A raccoon died in our attic, and the stench traveled throughout the entire house. Sickening. I worked in my dad's company, and one of the things we would do regularly was to clean and empty grease traps. We got to a Chinese restaurant where that was this grease trap in the basement that hadn't been emptied for 8 months. Couple that with the fact that there was 30 degrees down there. Worst smell I've ever encountered. I don't think I've ever been so sick because of a smell before. Went to Alaska. We were driving from Anchorage somewhere down the Kenai Peninsula and saw a dead gray whale washed up, so we decided to stop for a picture. Mother of God. That thing stank like heck from 100 yards away and only got worse as we got closer. I don't remember the smell being that different from a normal rotting animal, just much stronger. My roommate. You have a smell it to believe it exists. Nobody can blame their farts on my dog. It didn't wake me from a deep sleep, give me suicidal urges, and force me out of the house for half an hour. Definitely not a dog fart. The smoldering ruins of the World Trade Center after 9/11. One windy night, the smell drifted up to the Bronx and I started choking and had to shut all of my windows. No wonder a lot of first responders there got cancer. A slightly opened can of cat food that I forgot about. I spent days looking for a dead animal in my house, convinced my cats had dragged one in, but then I found the can. The tab had broken off but I was still able to get in, and it sat for about a week. It was so bad I threw up 3 times, washed my hands 6 times, couldn't get the smell on my fingers off, and I only touched the outside can for about 5 seconds. It was the smell of straight up rotted flesh and death in a can. Worse than a staph infection or an open septic tank. Rotted wet cat food, never again. Onion decaying inside with worms. So, I didn't realize, but I cut an onion and almost fainted. It was all empty from inside with worms and a putrid smell which is worse than a fresh crap taken by a man who ate a decomposing skunk. I smelled it 4 years ago and thinking about it still makes me want to throw up. I once found an old can of fish oil or something whilst cleaning out the garage. My olfactory nerves held a union meeting and went on strike until it was agreed that opening old fricked up things and smelling it was no longer in the negotiated contract. You have been visited by the money bird. It'll bring you good fortune, but only if you subscribe in 42 seconds or less. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check out another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.